Here's the brief news from the world over this week. Gun violence and mental illness are again in the headlines as authorities investigate another deadly shooting at the Fort Hood Army Base in Killeen, Texas. Specialist Ivan Lopez, an Iraq War veteran, allegedly opened fire on fellow soldiers at Fort Hood on Wednesday, killing 3 and wounding 16 others before he turned the gun on himself. Within hours of the attack, investigators examined whether the man's combat experience could have caused lingering psychological trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder. Fort Hood's senior officer, Lieutenant General Mark Miley, said Lopez had sought help and was being treated for a variety of problems, including depression and anxiety. Our thoughts and prayers are with all of those killed and injured, their families, and the entire Fort Hood community. More on mental health and what the church should be doing later in the show. On Tuesday, the U.S. bishops took their campaign for immigration reform to the border city of Nogales, Arizona. In a dramatic appeal, Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston and 7 other bishops celebrated a mass staged literally on the U.S.-Mexican border. Holy Communion was offered to outstretched hands reaching through the steel border fence and into America. During his homily, Cardinal O'Malley criticized the U.S. immigration system for causing untold suffering.
Families are separated, migrant workers are exploited, and tragically, human beings are dying on both sides of this wall. The suffering and death must end.
Remembering those who perished attempting to cross the border, the Cardinal laid a wreath and noted that the border is, quote, lined with unmarked graves of thousands who die alone and nameless, end quote. The bishops are also advocating for a raise in the minimum wage, another major goal for President Obama. The president stumped for the increase in Michigan this week. Both the White House and the U.S. Bishops' Conference have been urging members of Congress to raise the minimum wage. Opponents say the wage bump could lead to layoffs. The Senate could vote on a bill that would raise the wage by $10 to $10.10 an hour as early as next week. And Queen Elizabeth met with Pope Francis in Rome on Thursday. It was her first foreign trip in 3 years. Accompanied by her husband, Prince Philip, they had a private conversation which lasted about 30 minutes. Few details were offered. Pope Francis is the 5th pontiff Queen Elizabeth has met during her 62-year reign. As for the gifts, the Pope offered a priceless present for little Crown Prince George, an elaborate ornament made of semi-precious stone and featuring a silver cross belonging to St. Edward the Confessor. It was accompanied by a 1679 manuscript proclaiming the holy day of the saint. From the Queen, the Pope received an assortment of British foodstuffs, honeys, preserves, tea, a dozen eggs, haunch of venison from Windsor, and Balmoral whiskey. Back in the U.S., American dioceses paid out nearly $109 million last year in funds related to the clerical sexual abuse scandal. This according to the latest U.S. Bishops' report. Only 62% of that total was spent on settlements and therapy for victims. The rest covered attorneys' fees, support for offenders, and miscellaneous costs. Religious orders kicked in an additional $14.5 million. Also noted in the report, the total cost to the church since the abuse scandal broke in 2004, a whopping $2.74 billion. And a multi-million-dollar scandal is brewing in Atlanta as the Archbishop is apologizing for his decision to build a multi-million-dollar residence while defending it. Archbishop Wilton Gregory said it was a mistake to build the $2.2 million mansion located in a posh Atlanta suburb, even though he and his advisors were able to justify the project, quote, fiscally, logically, and practically. The manse features a gourmet kitchen, a safe room, and 6,400 square feet of living space. The Archbishop further defended the residence, saying that the money for the project came from an earmarked donation from the late Joseph Mitchell, nephew of Gone with the Wind author Margaret Mitchell. The Atlanta controversy comes a week after Pope Francis accepted the resignation of a German bishop who spent tens of millions of dollars refurbishing his residence. In an interview with the Associated Press, Archbishop Gregory was asked whether he had brought this matter to the attention of the Pope.
Oh, no. No, this doesn't rise to the standard of papal consultation.
The Archbishop said he would now consult with diocesan officials as to whether the new residence should be sold. And finally, Autism Awareness Month kicked off on April 2nd with the annual Light It Up Blue campaign. On Wednesday evening, iconic landmarks worldwide were dramatically lit to raise autism awareness. The autism rate among children continues to rise. An estimated 1 in 68 U.S. children are diagnosed with a neurodevelopmental disorder that is characterized by social impairment, communication difficulty, and repetitive patterned behavior. In support of the effort, the head of the Pontifical Council for Healthcare, Archbishop Zygmunt Zemowski, said the Vatican would sponsor a conference later this year dedicated to autism and urged more support for those afflicted with the condition.